Hello and welcome to the latest online information event here at PACT. My name is Emma Owen and I'm here with my colleague Emma Johnson, who is one of our senior social workers here at PACT. As usual, we're going to be talking today about the subject of adoption. We very much welcome your questions, so if you do have a question about adoption or what we're talking about, please do comment below, or you can private message us and we will do our very best to answer your questions here today, or we can answer them afterwards by message. So please do get involved. So today we are going to be talking about adopting siblings and older children. When people think about adoption, they quite often would assume that we're talking about adopting babies. But actually, the average age of a child who's adopted is 3 years and 3 months. So a little bit older than the babies that maybe people are thinking of. And we'd like to talk through today considering adopting a sibling group or an older child, just to see if it's maybe the right thing for you and your family. So, Emma, can you tell us, let's talk about siblings first. Why is it so important that brothers and sisters can stay together?
So children who are placed for adoption have lost such a lot in their lives already. They will have had tricky experiences, to say the least. Some of them will have had very difficult experiences within their birth family. But within those birth families, if they have siblings that they have strong relationships with, and they can carry on living with those siblings through adoption and into adulthood, then something really important has been kept for them through that adoption process. Children who've had tricky early life experiences can develop very strong bonds with their siblings, and the assessment often is that they can and they should live together. The sadness is, if we can't find adopters for those children, they will go to separate adoptive homes. And although we may be able to keep contact for them, and that's a really great thing if we can do that, it's not the same as growing up in that sibling relationship. So we really encourage people, if they're thinking of adopting, if they're thinking that they may want to have more than one child in future, to give really careful consideration as to whether they can do that from the beginning rather than adopting one child at a time.
And when we say sibling groups, we might be talking about 2.
Yep.
Or maybe 3.
Yes, or even 4 children.
Okay.
Not everybody is expected to do that. But there are lots of sibling groups of 2 children who need parents, who have that strong sibling relationship, that fun, playful, all that childhood siblings should be, rivalry, all of those things that are normal between brothers and sisters. And we want to keep those children in families together. There are sibling groups of 3 children waiting, and we appreciate that that's a lot for families to take all at once, but we know that it works because we do it. We see siblings grow up and move into families together successfully and go on to have that amazing childhood together in their new families.
Great, okay. And what sorts of things do people need to consider if perhaps they would think about adopting more than one child at once?
So all adopters have to be really realistic about what they're able to offer, the support that they have around them, their finances, the number of spare bedrooms that they have. That's true for all adopters. I think if you're adopting 2 or maybe 3 children, more thought needs to go into that because it happens so quickly, the growth of your family. So it's really important that people who are considering that know that there may be financial support for siblings who need to be adopted, or for older children that we're going to talk about in a minute. That isn't always the case, and not all families need that. But coming to talk to us, telling us what your situation is now, and talking to us about whether you have those skills and resources and the capacity and the will to want to have a perhaps larger than normal start to your family life. We're really happy to talk through those things and consider those things with you.
Great. And the process is the same for somebody thinking of adopting more than one child at once?
The process is exactly the same. The assessment is the same, as we've talked about, some additional considerations. But for some adopters, part of the attraction, I suppose, of adopting a sibling group together is that they don't need to go through that adoption assessment process more than one, maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the line. And that shouldn't be the only reason, obviously, but I would certainly suggest that people give careful thought about what it might be like to bring a child into a family later down the line through adoption. And that's not necessarily going to be easier than it is to adopt siblings together from the beginning.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about older children now. And when we say older children, what sort of age do you mean?
Well, as you said, sort of if the average age of children being placed for adoption is 3 years, 3 months, then we're not really talking very old. So any child over the age of 4 would be considered an older child in adoption. So really that whole primary and junior school age range are children who wait longest. Children can wait a very, very long time. Hopefully in amazing foster placements where they're being nurtured and cared for, but not with a mum of their own or a dad of their own, and that certainty about their future.
Great. So what should adopters be considering if perhaps an older child is right for them?
So an older child, and we've said older child means only maybe 4 or 5, they will have been living within their birth families for a longer period of time, obviously. So it's likely that the things that they've seen, the things that they've experienced, and some of the really difficult birth family experiences will have been going on for longer in their lives. They will have been impacting on them emotionally and behaviourally. But that said, that doesn't mean to say that these are necessarily all challenging children who are going to be really difficult to look after. We will be very open and honest about the needs of children, and there are all ranges of children waiting for adoption, older children waiting for adoption. What we do have to balance that longer period of time within birth families, of course, is that we know a lot more about children who are older because they can tell us. They can tell us what their experiences have been and the things that they've seen that have maybe been frightening or difficult for them to go through. And therefore we can support them with those things prior to adoption and through adoption. It's not unusual for a slightly older child to have had some therapeutic support already, and that can happen once they're in adoptive families. But they can also be part of the discussion and part of the process, telling us what they want their family to look like, what they hope for in a mum or in a dad. They're very actively involved in the whole process of thinking about the right family for them.
And for a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, there's still a lot of firsts to be had, aren't there?
Yes, I mean, I can completely understand why people thinking about adoption do immediately think about babies and wanting all of those amazing first opportunities and things that you have that happen, but to say that they don't happen for older children too isn't true. So supporting a child to start in nursery or in school, their first parties, their first activities, all of these things still happen when you adopt older children. I think it's true to say that the joy and the pleasure of adopting an older child who already has interests and hobbies, who you can feel a real sense of connection with through shared passions that you develop together, is something to really think about. I'd also say that from my own experience as an adoption social worker, lots of people start thinking that they're looking for a baby and maybe one child, and that isn't necessarily where they end up. People surprise themselves, and it's actually about their sense of connection to a child or to siblings that is the thing that helps them decide the family future for them and the children that are right for them. So to stay really open-minded about those things is just key.
And that process, that thinking and maybe adapting, that all takes place during the adoption process, doesn't it? It's not something that's decided after they're approved.
Yeah, absolutely. People can come to us just saying where they think they are. Often people come to us having had various experiences of not being able to have children, and they need some time to think about what their family future looks like. Some people will come to us really sure that they know what their family looks like. In adoption, you choose the age and the number and the gender of your children. And that will be something that grows and develops as you learn more about the children who are waiting. And these are real children with real life stories, with real interests, with real hobbies. And so it really is about getting to know as much as you can about that child and whether they're the right one for you, rather than necessarily having an age or number or even gender in mind from the beginning.
Thank you. We might have people watching this who might be on their own, without a partner. Does that stop somebody on their own? Should it stop somebody on their own thinking about adopting more than one child?
No. We have in PACT many single adopters who have adopted sibling groups of 2. Life is busy, let's not kid ourselves, life is busy when you're a parent anyway. Again, it's about your support network. So a child doesn't just come into a single parent family or a couple family. They come into a network, so that's friends and family, grandparents, uncles and aunties. There's a lot that adopted children have lost. There's a huge amount that adopted children gain by becoming part of an adoptive family. So for single adopters who are thinking that they may want to have more than one child, it's absolutely open to you to consider adopting 2 children.
Great. And what other sorts of support can people thinking of adopting through PACT, what can they expect support-wise from us?
So PACT has a really, really well-rounded support network that we provide for families. So we hope that all adopters have that themselves within their family and friends, but it's really important to know that there are people experienced and knowledgeable in adoption who are there with you every step of the way, through preparation, through placement, and on into supporting your family life. So that's adopters who are a little way down their journey and feel that they can give support to people who are at the start of their journey. We have social workers, and all adopters will have an allocated social worker who will be there with them through every step of the process. We have therapeutic social workers, and we have a whole therapeutic team, our FACTS, Family and Children Therapeutic Support Service, who between all of those things hope to provide just the right support that's needed at just the right time, not too much and not too little. But it's really important for all adopters to know that they have that available to them, and that doesn't stop after a month or a year. That's ongoing through adoption, because the challenges arise at different times in all children's lives, and you need to know that you've got that support there as an adopter.
And also we probably should mention the Adopter Hub, which is PACT's online support service available round the clock, and that's been developed by adopters for adopters. So we really pride ourselves on offering really great instant support through that. Okay, you mentioned financial support earlier. That's something which possibly could be available to adopters of sibling groups or older children.
Yeah, it depends on the circumstances of those particular children. Some children, frankly, wouldn't find adoptive homes. A sibling group of 3 or a sibling group of 4, it would be a pretty tall order for anybody to be able to manage all of those financial expenses from the beginning. So we talk really carefully with local authorities about what support they're able to provide. Sometimes that might be for a year, for example, in that first year where adoption leave is being taken. Sometimes it might be a 2 or 3 year agreement. And for some children, there is an ongoing agreement for financial support. So we wouldn't like to see people who have the skills, the experience, the capacity, the support around them to be able to adopt siblings, feeling that they can't do that for financial reasons alone. That would be doing a disservice to adopters. And so we talk with local authorities about that, and you would only proceed if you know that it would be financially viable for you to have that family life.
Okay. And what sorts of preparations do people thinking about adoption need to do, especially if they're thinking of adopting an older child? I mean, perhaps they need to get some sort of experience.
Absolutely, for older children, sibling groups, but frankly for all adopters, we recommend that you spend time with children by whatever means. So whether that's babysitting, making yourself the most popular person in your family or your network by babysitting for anybody who will let you. taking children to parks, having them in your home, having family, nephews, nieces or friends over for sleepovers. That all of that is such valuable experience, and it's part of helping you decide the age of child that you feel that you are best able to connect with in the beginning and support on into adoptive family life yourself. There are loads of places where you can get voluntary experience with children who would be very, very happy to have you come along. So places like Beavers and Brownies, Cubs and Scouts, those kind of organisations are always happy to have people come and offer their help. And that is a great place to get some experience with some slightly older children, to see different personalities of children, to see children interacting, so that when you come to talk to us, you're well informed about what children are like at different ages. I think it's also really helpful if you can look outside the box a little bit. Sometimes there are great organisations who work with children with additional needs, whether that's physical needs, emotional needs, behavioural needs. That may not be what you think you're looking for in adoption or what you have to offer as a potential parent. But exploring those things, again, I think is a really important part of you thinking through and deciding what you're able to offer and the child who might be right for you.
Fantastic. Just a reminder that if anybody who does have any questions for Emma, that please do comment below and we'll do our best to answer those. I had a question. Spare rooms. Do you need a spare room for each child that you're going to adopt?
So ideally that would be great, but that isn't always the case. I think there's a bit of a myth that you always have to have a room for every child. Now, local authorities are looking for what's realistic and practical. So if, for example, you have 2 little girls waiting for adoption who are aged 2 and 3 who already share a room, it's perfectly fine that through adoption they may go on to share a room. If there are mixed gender siblings, it's more likely that a local authority are going to be looking for them to be able to have separate rooms. So again, come and talk to us about your particular circumstances. It may be, for example, that you only have 1 room to spare right now, but you are planning in the future that you will be able to expand your home or move. Not something that's recommended in the early stages of adoption, but we are thinking about adoption for life, so it's thinking about the longer term plans as well. Some local authorities will be stricter on wanting children to have a room of their own, but it's not necessarily a preclusion if you don't.
Okay. Would you say siblings are harder than one child?
Not necessarily. Children are children. So a child coming into an adoptive family on their own is joining without the benefit of any of that support network that they had before. Everything is new for them. Everybody they meet and everywhere they go is new. And that can be a challenge for some children. Siblings coming into a home have each other. They have that history, they have that connection, they have that familiarity and that bond. And siblings can really support each other through that transition process into becoming part of a new family. It's not true to say that 2 children are twice as tricky to look after as 1 child. That's not the way that it works. Neither is it sort of necessarily the case that siblings will always be delightful and lovely and have a great relationship. Siblings are siblings. They will argue and they will fall out. They will have disagreements. They will love each other and they will hate each other in equal measure sometimes, just as all children do. It's no different in adoption. So life may be busier if you adopt more than 1 child, but not necessarily. I think for children who are adopted on their own, that the relationship they have with their adopters isn't buffered by there being other people to play with, by having other children that they have an interest with, by having that shared connection again. So the relationship is very much one-on-one or one-on-two, whereas with siblings it's a different dynamic, but not twice as difficult as one.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I'd like to know, what's the oldest age that a child would normally be considered for adoption?
So the There is a widespread, I think really any child within the primary and junior age range, it's rare to find children being placed for adoption. But that's not to say that there aren't children who could be placed for adoption who are in their sort of getting into their early teenage years. But by that stage, children need to know where their future lies, and it can be incredibly unsettling for a much older child not to know for a very long time. But local authority social workers think really carefully about a child, for example, of 6, 7, 8, 9, as to whether they will be able to cope with that process of knowing that social workers are looking for a forever family for them. It may well be phrased to them in terms of, we're looking for the best family for you, and that may be foster carers or it may be adopters. It's tricky to think of any child thinking that they haven't been picked, that they haven't been chosen, that they're too old, and that people don't like playing with kids who are 6, 7, 8, 9. Again, I really want to encourage anybody who's watching this to spend time with children of that age, enjoy being with children of that age, and think about whether that's something that they're able to do.
Okay. I think we've got a question here. How much contact with birth parents will adopted children have?
That's a great question. So it is more likely that an older child may have a plan that will involve some level of ongoing communication with a birth parent. Not necessarily. It's true to say that for young children as well, there is likely to be a contact plan which will involve at least what we call indirect contact. So maybe that's letter writing between adopters and birth family. The older a child is, the more time they've had to develop those strong relationships. So even if things have been really difficult within their birth families, have maybe not been safe, they maybe haven't had their care needs met in terms of food and just the basics of day-to-day life, that's not to say that those relationships and the emotional connections haven't formed with birth families. And for some children, the best plan for them, the best option for them, is that they can retain those to some level. So for example, where letterbox contact, indirect contact with younger children may be between adopters and birth parents, with older children it may well be letters that are sent from a birth child to let their birth parents, maybe grandparents, maybe siblings, know how they are and what they're doing and how school's going, and that they will be involved in receiving letters back from their birth parents. For some children, there will be a plan for direct contact, maybe once or twice a year, in a very, very supportive way, with lots of careful planning. And lots of careful planning on both sides. That's for birth family as well as for children who've been adopted. Again, that's something that can feel quite hard to think about if you're thinking about adoption, but the absolute gift you can give to a child of helping them retain that birth family connection, but in a safe way and not having that relationship severed, is really, really important. So there are all children with all contact plans waiting to be adopted, and so it's about feeling how far you can go with that and what you're able to offer for your child and for their birth family.
Great. Well, thank you very much. If you're not watching this live and you're watching it later and you do have a question, please do pop it in the comments and we can answer that for you. So just to say finally, there are 2,730 children waiting for adoption right now, and 41% of them have been waiting 18 months or longer. So there are lots of children out there of all ages with all different needs. So if adoption is something you are thinking about, please do come to PACT and find out a bit more. We have regular information events where you can come and hear from a social worker and also from an adoptive family. We have one tonight, which is Tuesday the 16th of July in London. We have one on Thursday the 18th of July in Reading, and one on Wednesday the 24th of July in Worthing. Further dates are on our website, which is pactcharity.org/info. You will find all of our information events listed on there. You can also download a guide to adoption on our website, which will give you lots of background information on adoption and adopting with PACT. So please do get yourself a copy of that. We do have a film of one of our PACT adopters who adopted a sibling group of 3 young children, and we have a lovely short film of her talking about what that's like for her, and we're going to put the link to that film on this post here on Facebook. So take a look at that and get the words of somebody who's actually done it before. So we hope that this has been useful for you. Thank you very much, Emma, for all that information. And as I said before, if you're interested in adoption, please contact us, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.